God, we just thank you for tonight. Once again, all the parents here, I thank you for the kids that are represented. God, I ask that you would help us to recall what we learned last week and to continue to apply that to our parenting, and then that you would give us wisdom to receive new knowledge this week, and that we would begin to apply that as well. God, I thank you that you truly are the foundation, and everything that we build, or any truths that you give us and we build on this foundation, God, will benefit our children. And I just thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, well, go ahead and get out your homework from last week. And some of you heard me say this, but he's the principal at Park Elementary School, and they had parent-teacher conferences tonight, so you're stuck with me alone. So you won't get as good as stories. He's the storyteller, and I'm the instructor. So he'll probably make it up for you next week. But all right, so remember last week we did more is caught than taught. Who can give me feedback on what that means, or maybe even an example this week of more is caught than taught? Okay, so they're watching you, not necessarily always listening, but they're going to follow your example. You are the role model. So does anybody have a good example this week for me as you were being conscious?
Well, not really this week. I have a good example.
Okay.
That you gave last.
Okay, I'll take that. Remind us.
Even like something simple about like just putting about an age, like, oh, you're 5 today.
Okay,
Like,
so
you don't think about
the
that.
example is that I lied to my child, and that's what you remember about last week. Oh, well, whatever. Okay,
We're all guilty of it.
I know, I confess, I'm done. He turned out good. One mistake, you're allowed one mistake, and you've already made it, you can't make any more. Anybody this week have an example with their own kids of either something good or maybe something bad that you did that they mimicked, and you're like, oh.
There's lots of good things that they mimic. And
Okay.
maybe those go unseen because that's expected
There
in
you
some
go.
way. I do know, and one of the things that going through this and just being maybe more self-aware over the last couple of weeks is, trying not to being aware if and when and as I raise my voice.
Okay.
And so since I've been more self-aware in doing that, I've noticed the kids doing it more also. So I think because I'm looking for it, I see it more
Okay.
in them.
Okay.
And so it's just being aware that
Yeah.
that is one of they're mimicking me
Yeah.
when they do that,
That's good.
when they reply to something, or when they reply or respond within each other even.
Right, it's good. And I think that is a key, like recognizing what you're doing. Because I think sometimes we just go through life, it is what it is, but what if we were able to recognize what we're doing right and continuing to do that, or finding something wrong, correcting, or even being, this is a really big one, being open to your spouse saying, maybe we should, Bill always says, we should do this, which really means, maybe you should be careful about that. But what are we really, but allowing your spouse to help you be better at things too, I think is really good. So, all right, let's look at the homework. Hopefully you took time to take each of these a day. I know that is difficult, but if you can do that, that gives you processing. And we know that once you learn something, and then you will actually try it and process it, get it in your brain, practice it, talk about it, before you move on to the next thing, it's more likely that it's gonna stick with you, and it's gonna continue to be. And like we said last week, it's really important that there's 6 things here that you're building on. Like, last week, we learned about modeling. Well, if you just throw that out the window and you go on to the next one, it's not gonna matter. You wanna keep building on each one of these. And so, I think it's important to examine, you did this in your homework, how did you learn to parent? What were some things that your parents did well? What were some things that they did that you won't redo? Because nobody had perfect parents, right? And then an example of a way you were a positive role model. So any of those answers that you gave, I'm gonna have you guys share those. Somebody wanna share the first one? When and where did you learn how to parent?
I learned from my parents.
Okay,
Some bad and some good.
okay,
And then on my own for parenting, I added my own techniques.
okay. So can you tell me something that your parents did well that you continue to do in your parenting?
Taught me wrong from right.
Okay.
And then the disciplinary wasn't the greatest.
Okay, so, but you clearly had a standard of this is wrong and this is right.
Yes.
And you've practiced that with your kids?
Yep.
How do you tell them what's right and wrong?
I mean, if they make a mistake or do something's wrong, mean, just let them know, hey,
Okay.
that's not okay, this is how we do it,
Okay.
this is not what you do.
Okay. And that's really good, and we're gonna, just taking the time to parent is huge. Like, I know that sounds like, of course, but I mean, it's easy to not parent. There's a lot of non-parenting going on because it takes time and it takes effort. Just stop it and move on. Or, let's just distract them so we don't have to worry about behavior. We don't have to take time with them. We don't have to teach them right from wrong. How will they know? But taking time to parent is huge.
Yep.
And you can think, did your parents take time to parent you or not? And the other thing to think about is when your parents were parenting you, how was it different than the way you're having to parent today? What's different about your life than when you were growing up that makes a difference in your parenting? Can you think of any examples for that?
I think, like for us, it was safety, so growing up, my parents never really had to worry about, we didn't even have a key. Like when we sold the house,
Okay.
we had to get new locks because we didn't have a key
Okay.
to the house. So I mean, just general safety of knowing
Right.
where your kids are and
Okay.
at all times, and, because our kind of rule of thumb was no news is good news.
Yeah.
Kind of deal,
Okay.
you know?
Maybe more freedom. Did you have more freedom?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's good, it's good. How many of your parents had cell phones? Raise your hand if your parent had a cell phone when you were growing up. Did your parents have cell phones? Okay, do your parents have cell phones, ma'am? What's her name? She raised her hand. Little girl. Your parents have cell phones? Okay. Anybody else's parents have cell phones when you were 10 years old?
There's no such thing.
Okay. How is parenting different now because you have a cell phone and your parents didn't have cell phones?
Media, social media.
Okay.
The computer skills.
Okay.
It opens up a
Okay.
whole new.
Okay. Okay, what
But
just?
also safety. When we were younger, if you didn't come home, or, you know, your parents didn't know where you were at.
Right.
There was no way to contact you.
Right, right.
But now, with the cell phones, you can contact
Okay, okay.
your kids.
It's good, it's good. You can help your kids make decisions as they're going, which we're gonna talk about, that could be both good and bad.
Find them.
What?
Find them.
You can find them, okay, but what about you as parents? Let's not eliminate the kids, but how are you a different parent because you have a cell phone than your parents were who did not have a cell phone?
Just another distraction, right?
Okay.
Like the kids are in competition with.
Okay, okay, a lot. Is that not true? I mean, it's true for all of us. You know, I think even my parents' marriage was different because they didn't have cell phones. Then we have to make a conscious effort to be present with each other because we have cell phones or because we have iPads or whatever. So that piece is just another piece of, we can parent the way our parents parented, but there's a lot of ways that we can't. We have to figure out how to do that. How many of you were taught phone manners? And you couldn't answer the phone till you were a certain age, you know? We don't even, do you teach phone manners anymore? Just a minute, please, I'll get them, remember that? We used to practice, like with our kids, like somebody would call, we would call from the other room, and they'd have to practice good phone manners, but your kids don't even know what a phone is. I mean, they know what a cell phone is, but they don't know what, huh?
Never answered the real phone.
Yeah, yeah. So I think keep that in mind, that a lot of things you can learn positive that your parents taught you that they did, but there's a lot of things that we're learning for the first time in parents that we didn't know how to do. So we have to think through that. How are we gonna do that? Anybody have a negative, we don't wanna go too far into this, but anybody have a negative of something that you saw your parents do that you do differently?
Discipline.
Okay,
Like, I mean, I remember getting bored whenever I
Okay.
acted up, and like, whenever it comes to Braylon's safety, like, I'll spot on the butt, but, I mean, he's 4, and that's only happened maybe a handful of times.
Okay.
Like, if it comes like her running out in the road, I'm gonna spot her on the butt.
Right.
But other than that, like, we talk things through, like, time out, but, yeah.
Okay, so the way,
Remember-
yeah, and you mentioned that too, the way you discipline is different, and you see things differently. And I think we can be really good parents by learning from our parents. You can take the good, but I think if you recognize the things that they didn't do well, I think you'll have to be really conscious of them though, because have you ever heard your mother and your father coming out of your mouth? Like you're, oh my goodness, I sound just like my mother, I sound just like my dad, because instinctually, that is how you learned. And so, if there's something that you know that you don't want to do, you'll have to make an effort not to do it that way. But we can learn from mistakes too, right? And so that's really important.
I have one.
Okay,
My dad would say, do such and such, and you couldn't, you had no say in doing it differently, or,
right,
I mean, you just did it and you keep your mouth shut, right?
Right.
Well, sometimes I had this even happen with my foster kids. You ask them to do something, I tried to explain to them, if I ever ask you to do something and you want to do something different for some reason, you just need to tell me
Right.
why, and maybe they're, perfect example, they were playing ball over by the outbuildings. I didn't want them that far from the house, so I was trying to get them to come play by the house, and they weren't wanting to obey me. Instead of stopping and explaining to me why they wanted to play there versus by the house, because there was trees by the house, they didn't want the ball to get in the trees. I tell them, if there's something you want to do differently than what I'm asking you to do, you can respectfully state
Right.
why you want to
That's
do it
good.
differently.
that's really good.
And we talk about,
Yeah.
maybe I'll change my mind if you explain to me why you want to do something
Yeah,
differently.
that's really good. That's a great example that we didn't write in here, but when we took a parenting class, they called it the appeal rule. And it was really good, where if you have not to argue, but if you have a new piece of information that we don't know, and you respectfully say, may I appeal your decision? It was a big word. We talked about what appeal means, but they loved that because it wasn't arguing. It wasn't trying to get your way. It was, you need to go to bed at 9 o'clock because I said 9 o'clock.
Right.
May I appeal? There's 5 minutes left in this movie. Well,
Right.
yeah, we can give you 5 minutes, but instead of, no, throwing a fit,
Right.
whatever, and
Or
so
just
I
not
think
obeying.
that it gave them the, right now, you don't wanna do that till they're probably 10 or older, because they don't have the information they needed. But I think that's a really
But
good
not ever
one.
being able to say what you think about
Right,
something.
right.
I hated that growing up.
Yeah, yeah.
Not being able to say
Yeah.
what I thought was.
And it teaches kids good skills, but they also have to be characterized by obeying. Because you guys have, some of your kids will always argue. No matter what you ask them to do, they don't want to do it, and they argue. They don't have the right to appeal.
That's
It's kids who are characterized by doing what they're supposed to do, then they, and we talked about that. We would take the appeal rule away if they were arguing about everything we ask. The rule doesn't work, we'll let you know when you have that right back, so that's a good,
They earn
that's
the
good.
right.
What?
You have to earn the right.
Yeah, by obeying. Perfect, good. All right, day 2, you looked at a positive way you handled your child's negative behavior, an example of a habit that you have that you do not want your child to have. All right, how many of you did have your kids with you in the home and you did number 1? Anybody? Will you share with us what you did, Charles?
Day 2.
On number 1?
Well, he's actually ready to leave. He wanted to take a toy with him,
Okay,
and he was kind of arguing about it, so I got stern with him, but I was still respectful, kept it, not yelling at him.
okay,
I just,
okay,
I told him, no, you need to live it here.
okay. Firm, but not out of control. Responded, not reacted, that's really good. Okay, anybody else have one for 1 or 2? Then you want to give an example?
Not with my kid, but with Kathy and Kevin, like redirection, like whenever they would do something wrong, like just like redirecting them or like making them aware of their negative behavior. And even myself, and then,
She's 26, I'm 41, okay, that's really me.
They live together, they live together without their kids. And so I told them, they were sitting over here last week, I said, you can practice having good role modeling with the other adult in your
I'm the
apartment.
immature one, she's
Oh, you're making me blush. And then give an example of a habit that you have that you do not want your child to have. I kind of worded it bad, but like bad mouthing anyone. Not necessarily bad mouthing, but like just more aware of like whenever I start to say negative things, and especially being in the program, like I really don't know how to have healthy conversations. I hate to admit that, but I don't. So I'm like constantly like catching myself, and I did something like my daughter was around. Some of the things that come out of my mouth are not.
Well, and a couple of things about that. Some of you who are trying to work on getting your children back in the home, this is a great time to practice those skills. If you have your children, working with another person and thinking, how am I talking? Like being aware, and that's a good one, because isn't that true? Have you ever caught yourself, you're talking to somebody on the phone and you hang up, then you say something about that person on the phone? And do you do that every time? Do you always have to find I mean, you need to be aware of those things, because you will turn your child into a griper, a complainer. They complain. Is that okay to do behind people's back? Yeah, probably not. Not a good thing to do, so you don't want to teach them that. That's a really good example. But find that. Okay, now I'm not going to make you confess if you raise your hand, but did anybody find something this week that you were doing that you thought, oh, I need to change that behavior? My child will become that. And I think be self-aware. If you didn't, look this week, because I don't think any of us in here are perfect. Raise your hand if you're perfect. Okay, perfect. Perfect. But being aware of what can I change about myself? What is that? What am I role modeling to others? And so that was day 2. And then day 3, what is one area you're working on with your child to improve? And are you a positive role model in that area? Does anybody have an example of that one?
She's not.
Okay, go ahead.
My daughter's type 1 diabetic.
Okay.
And one of the things that we're trying to make an effort to really getting her to eat a healthier diet.
Okay. That's a good one.
And I put in my positive example, obviously not, but I'm trying to do that right along with her.
Okay.
And we're looking at low carb stuff
Okay.
and
Good.
keto,
Yeah.
so.
That is an excellent example. I mean, even if your child isn't have diabetic issues, what are we trying to teach our children? Healthy lifestyles, things to do, and we have to have the self-discipline in our own lives, and we talked about keeping your own things picked up around the house. Don't get out new toys till you put away these toys. Well, that's all fine, but is your stuff strewn all over, And so I think that's some of them are very practical things that we can begin to really model for our kids. That's a really good example. Anybody else have an example?
What I do I did with both of them, but what I do with the smaller one, I've been trying to teach them that you can be mad and you have every right to be mad at whatever you're mad at, but it's all in how you react when you're mad, and I know I struggle with that.
That's
and
good.
So I've been trying to, okay, I'm gonna walk away, go take a time out, you wanna go be mad, go sit on the porch or wherever,
That's good.
and for the most part, follows it.
Right. And I think you can talk out loud. That's going to be one of the lessons, but you can talk out loud. Okay, right now I'm feeling really mad. I don't like the situation, or I was treated unfairly. I'm going to choose to go in my room for 10 minutes. So everybody, I'm going to take a 10-minute time out. Everybody just leave me for 10 minutes, because this is how I'm going to have to handle it. And I think I remember doing that with my kids, and my daughter got to the point where she'd say, could you leave and give me 10 minutes, because I'm going to say something to you that I'm going to be in trouble for. Like, you're making me really mad right now. And we gave her that right. Okay, but then I'll be back in 10 minutes and we're going to talk. But she knew she was losing self-control, and she was going to, and so I thought that's really, and Phil does that very well. Like, if we're in a conflict, he'll be like, either you take a walk around the block or I will, but we've got to separate for a minute and then come back together and talk about this, because I'm getting mad. I'm going to say, I don't want to be ugly. I don't want to fight. Okay. He's better about that. I was like, no, let's talk about it right now. But I just think that's a very, very good example of how to teach your children as you're doing life, how do you handle things or not. And they've probably seen it the other way as well. Right? And so now they know that you're working on that, and then you can ask them to work on things as well. That's really good. Any other example? We'll have time for one more. Okay. All right. Again, if you didn't think of one, do that this week. Even though you don't have to go back and do this homework again, some of you who weren't here will do it, but keep thinking about, what am I doing well? What am I need to improve on? Even if you just did one thing a week, think how perfect we would be in 1 year if every week we did something new. All right, we're going to go to session 2, and this is a powerful lesson. This one is one that is a little bit harder to make practical, but I think that if you understand the concept, it's life-changing in your parenting. Many of you that call and ask about parenting, I said, this is a faith-based parenting program. This one will really stand out in that. You're gonna understand the faith-based piece of this, because I believe with all of my heart, that is the key. Like I was telling Leslie and Corbin earlier about because they weren't here last week, so we went over last week's with them. But your kid, you have different kids and parent them the same way, and they react and turn out differently. How many of you have more than one child and you've been the same parent and you're like, how could they be so different, right? So parenting depends on the child, the temperament of the child. It depends on what season of life you're in. Like, aren't you a better parent sometimes when things are going well in your life, and then when things are stressful, you're not as good a parent? There's just so many variables on what kind of parent you are that parenting feels very loose. Like, is there a right and wrong? I don't think there is. Is there a black and white? I mean, I remember thinking, why doesn't God just give us a checklist? Okay, when they're 3, if you do all these things, they'll turn out great. I'll do it. I'll do whatever's on that checklist. But it's not like that. Parenting is not black and white. And so we really do have to trust in God to know how to do this. He created this child. He created us. He knows the mesh of temperaments. Is there some of your children, it's not you love them more or less, but they're easier for you to parent. Their personality is different than yours. Maybe your spouse. I remember there were stages in our kids' lives when Phil did just so much better with our daughter. I mean, I might as well just step out, let him do it. And the opposite was true. I could really parent our son better than he could. And I don't know if it was because of the guy, girl, I don't know, or maybe temperament, but it changes. It changes with kids, it changes with seasons. So, but God knows us and God knows our kids. So He can help us parent the right way. And so looking at this today, this lesson is building a foundation that leads to courage and confidence. And I just want to refer to you on page 13, the scripture that I have really made this my life verse, because I feel like if we can understand this and build our lives around this, it makes life so much smoother. And it says, but seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. If we can learn to seek God in His answers, do things the way He shows us to do them, then He will take care of the things that are out of our control. I know what I know, this is what I do know, this is who I can look to, and He's going to take care of things. Because have you ever felt, I really don't have control? How many of you like to be in control? How many of you are super frustrated when things get out of control and you cannot do anything about them? And that's why I love to be in control. I like things orderly and processed, and I like things to go the way I expect them. If I set it up, it should go that way. Well, you set yourself up for success or for failure, because that just doesn't always work. And so I do know that I can believe God and I can stand on His word, and He's going to take care of these other things. And so I love this verse. So the goal of this session is for you to understand relationship time, to practice relationship with times with God, your spouse, your mentor, in order to build a secure and stable foundation. So a strong foundation equals security. The whole precedent behind this lesson is, if we're going to parent secure children, we've got to have a solid foundation. You know that's true because you've been in times in your life when things were shifting. You were crisis, you weren't unsure, and things really fell apart around you. Your kids were out of control, your marriage was out of control. It just felt you didn't have anything solid to stand on. It really felt like the bottom was dropping out from under you. So what do we do to build a solid foundation? So we're going to look at that today. And the number one thing that builds a solid foundation for your kids is a stable relationship. They need to be able to find a stable relationship in their lives. They need to be able to look at one and see it's stable. If you're okay, they're okay. If you're not okay, they are not okay, because they're looking to you to figure out, are we okay or not? They don't know. They don't know life well enough. And so the stable relationship is super important. So I want you to look at number one. I want you to think about this, write an answer down. It says, what is your definition of a stable relationship? And then number two says, give an example of a stable relationship that you can remember as a child. So go ahead and answer both of those questions. Definition of a stable relationship and an example of a stable relationship you remember as a child.
Man.
If that doesn't work, then, okay, that one may not either, so try it. I'll give you another one if it doesn't work.
Do you need them pins if they're working?
I don't know, if you can catch it, you can try it.
Yeah. I forgot mine in the car.
If that doesn't work, I'll throw you. Okay, good. Okay, what's your definition of a stable relationship?
Being compassionate towards each other and,
Okay.
you know, loving on each other and,
Okay.
minimal fighting and, you know, just displaying your affection towards each other.
So if I can look on a relationship and see the compassion, see the affection, see the kindness, that's stable, right?
To me.
Yeah, okay. What else? What?
Communication, compassion.
Okay, talking to each other, okay? What
Where they're
else?
united.
Okay, what do you mean?
You can see that they both, despite what differences they need, they've come together to
Okay.
agree to,
Okay,
and it doesn't falter or waver.
okay. Stable means even if the things around them aren't good or great, they're still okay. They're still united. They still stand together. That's really good. What else is the definition of a stable relationship?
Being able to trust.
Okay. Trust is a huge one. It's really big. Anything else?
Confidence, understanding, and friendship.
Okay, you like each other, okay, and you're confident in that person. It's really good.
And when they work things out, and without worrying that one will lose.
Okay, that's really good. Stable means I can trust that person is always gonna be there, that I'm not worried that that person is or is not going to come home or is not going to show up. It's really good. Anything else anyone wants to share about what they wrote about a stable relationship? Okay, somebody share with me, as a child, a stable relationship you remember, not between you and somebody else, but between two other people that you watched and you saw that they had a stable relationship. Can anybody describe that for me?
My parents.
Okay, you watched your parents and they did what you wrote down there. Okay, it's good.
Not with my grandparents.
Okay, grandparents. Okay, good. Is there anybody who couldn't think of one? I mean, that could be a possibility, you know, that you're like, I don't know that I knew two people that had a stable relationship. Now, I'll tell you this, that doesn't mean that you can't have one, but that doesn't mean it makes it a little more difficult if someone didn't model that. And so what I want to say to you today is you need to become, this is what this whole lesson's about. You need to, when your child sits in the place that you are, when they're your age, can they say, my mom, my dad had a stable relationship? And so we want to talk about today what that looks like. What does it look like for you? Some of you are married. That can be your stable relationship. Some of you are not married. your child still needs to see you in a stable relationship. So I really want to make sure that you understand that. They need to see that you're okay because there's somebody in your life that you have a stable relationship with. That is key. The reason that's so important is that they find their security and their safety in how, if you're okay. They need to see that for you. Let me ask you this. When you came in tonight, how many of you felt more comfortable about this parenting class than you did last week? Okay, why?
Got a feel for it? I'm sorry.
Okay, that's right, okay.
You know what to expect.
You know what to expect. You knew where to come this time, okay? You didn't walk in, open the door and think, oh, I hope I'm in the right place, okay? You knew what to expect. You knew you came to the right place. You felt hopefully fairly comfortable last week. I can do this again last week. It's not like painful, you know. I don't think anybody felt embarrassed or called out. You felt safe here, okay? So there's something settling in you about coming. The next time, even more so, right? Do you remember the first day you went to your job, the very first time? Do you remember meeting someone for the first time? Or let me ask you this, have you ever been in a situation where there was crisis around you and you got that uneasy feeling like, I'm not sure what's gonna happen, I don't know what to expect? Now, as adults, when we don't know what to expect, sometimes we will get very quiet or we'll isolate. Children, a lot of times, if it's unstable and they don't know what to do, they'll try to create safety in their environment. A lot of times that's by acting out. Give me some structure, give me some rules, give me some expectations, and then I can follow through. If they never know exactly what to expect, there's not a security, and we're going to talk about more when we talk about structure and routine, but even in relationships, if they're looking at you and your life seems to be crazy, it seems to be unstable, I don't know if you're good or you're not good, then it brings a lot of turmoil into children's lives. We'll see things like this. Now, this isn't a 100%, but sometimes in parenting class, children, continual bedwetting. If that child is in a crisis situation, they really struggle with not wetting the bed. That can actually be a sign of they're looking for a stable environment. Discipline problems at school. I wish Phil was here because he will tell you stories that they can sometimes tell that there's something going on at home. There's a stressor in the home because all of a sudden this child who didn't have any discipline problems all of a sudden is doing all this acting out because they don't know how to handle the instability at home. So it really directly affects the discipline of your children. You know that's true. I can think of this being in our home. Maybe see if you've experienced this before, in that when there's turmoil between you and your husband, you know, you and your wife, you're having disagreement or things aren't good, all of a sudden you look around and you're like, not only are we arguing, but everybody's arguing. Like the house is just turned into chaos all of a sudden because they're shouting out, I don't feel safe, I don't feel safe, you guys aren't okay, we're not okay. And it just begins to get really a bigger problem. And so we've got to figure out as parents, how do we bring stability into our children's lives? How do we set it up so we're okay? And that's by having a stable relationship. So I want to look at, go ahead and turn to page 14, and we're going to look at 3 different ways that this can happen for you, and the important ones. The first one, the number one is relationship time with God. Going back to that, Matthew 6:33. Now, I understand that as I teach you this, for some of you, you're going to go, okay, yeah, whatever. She's like Jesus freak, whatever, you know. But I'm telling you, this is a piece that has been a lifesaver in my life, and it's been a lifesaver in my marriage. It's been a lifesaver in my parenting. It's been a lifesaver in my job. Just life as a whole is figuring out that I can have a relationship with the God who created me. It has been such a strong, firm foundation. It's given me confidence, it's given me understanding, it's given me wisdom, and I can be a better wife. I can be a better parent because I've chosen to have a relationship with God. Now, that's a pretty big concept to think that I could have a relationship with the creator of the universe, right? But I know as a Christian that God made a way. He said, if you accept Jesus Christ and you allow Jesus Christ to take on your sin, then you can have a relationship with a perfect God. You can actually communicate with a perfect God through salvation in Jesus Christ. And so this relationship time is key to me. Like, I spend time praying, spend time reading the Bible, believing that's what God gives me understanding and truth of what he's trying to say to me. That is a key relationship in my life. Like, I can't do life without it. I remember one time, and it hasn't always been that way for me, but I remember one time after I really started making it key, like, I believe I can pray to God. I believe I can read the Bible and really receive wisdom and knowledge and understanding. It's a pretty big concept, but I believed it. And so I started having time of prayer every day, and I started reading my Bible every day. And then life just got busy. You know, just didn't have time to do that. There's just too much going on. And I remember clearly I was standing in my kitchen, and I got that feeling. Do you remember the feeling like when you went to camp or you went to spend the night with someone and you felt homesick? Anybody else know that feeling, like that gut feeling? And I had that feeling as an adult. I'm standing in my own kitchen, and I was like, what is that? And I thought, I haven't spent time with God in weeks, and I'm just unsettled. I just don't feel right. And I remember him just thinking, I've got to get back to that. That is a stable piece of my life, and it makes a difference in my life whether I do that. Since then, haven't gone back to that because I like the secure feeling. I like that stable relationship. I'm okay. I can count on the creator of the universe to help me get through things that I can't get through by myself. I don't have control over. So I believe the most important relationship you can have is with Jesus Christ. It is with God. And having that's a firm foundation. I waver, he never wavers. It's all, I know he's always the same. I can, you mentioned knowing what's right and wrong. Sometimes I got this overwhelming feeling when I was raising my kids, what is right and wrong? I mean, what was right and wrong when I was being raised in the 70s is different than it is today. How do I know what's right and wrong? And my neighbor lady is doing it different than I'm doing it. So how do you know? Anybody got an answer for me? I mean, how do you know what's right and wrong?
Very hard.
Okay. I loved the fact that I could go back to the Word of God, and that could be my measuring tool. And I would tell my kids that. Like, we've decided, we're the Heekes, and we've decided that what God said is right and wrong is what we're going with. No matter what, how much things change, this is what we're going with. And I remember telling them, I'm going to stand before God someday, and he's going to say, I gave you these children. I told you how to raise them. Did you stop doing that because they threw fits? Or because they said, Johnny's not doing that, so we shouldn't have to do that? And I said, no, I'm gonna do what I think is right, and that's my standard. But I knew that because I had a relationship with God. And even if they didn't always like what I was doing, they knew my standard. And I remember, this was probably the biggest aha for me, was we talked about it. We talked about a relationship with God. That was important to us. And we were just raising our kids. I don't know that when they were little, I don't remember. When we took them to church and we took them to Sunday school, and we talked about God and we prayed, and we talked about how when we didn't know what to do, we turned to God. We prayed with them, but we're just doing life. And I remember my daughter was 15, and Phil's sister got really, really sick with cancer, and she was living in Colorado. We were teaching school, and it was summer, but it was a really stressful summer because I was teaching at the college and he was teaching summer school, and we were trying to she lives in Aspen, Colorado, and we were trying to go there and come back, and it's just really stressful. She got really bad, like she was about to die. And I remember we were just really upset, like we got to figure out where to leave. Are we going to take the kids? Are we going to take his dad with us? It was just felt very. And I was really upset, and I remember where I was sitting. I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to leave. What are we going to do about this? And I remember my daughter just slamming her hand down on the table like this. She's 15, and she's like, really? And I'm like, what? You're making it more stressful. And she's like, my whole life you'd say to me, we're just going to trust God on this. He's got the answers. When things are out of control, we're going to trust God. How many times do you think you've said that to me, Mom? And I'm like, oh. She's like, every day. And now look at you, you're freaking out. We're going to trust God on this. And I was like, oh, she got it. She's 15 and she got it. And I thought, she knew the relationship was I perfect? No. Were there things I did wrong? Yes. But she knew where that stable relationship was. And so even when I was out of control, she could remind me of that. That's a relationship that all of us can have. Single, married, whatever. Our kids can see that. And I'm telling you from experience, it works. I've got a 23 and a 25-year-old, and they understand that stable relationship and have chosen to have that relationship in their lives. And they have Their lives aren't perfect, but boy, they have a smooth life because they know what the source of is their answer. So that one is a big one. And I would really encourage you to look into that. What does that look like for you? If you don't have that, you don't know how to do that, I will talk more personally to you, but that my job is discipleship pastor out of First Assembly of God. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me was I get to help people on their spiritual journey. Like that is, I don't even know why they pay me, it's so great. Like I get to walk with people and say, how can I help you have a relationship with the creator of the universe? And so I love doing that. So if you want, sit down and you won't have to pay me. I'll do it for free. Okay. So relationship with time with God, a big one. The second one is relationship with your spouse. Okay. Some of you are married here and some of you are not. But that relationship with the spouse is key for them. Your kids, if they're living with you as their mom and dad, they're looking to you as their stability. If you're okay, they're okay. On this one, let's just kind of read that one together on number 2. It says, children need to see that parents love each other and are on the same page. Parents are children's stability. They look to you to find their safety and security. Solid marriages are a foundation for secure children. Your children should see you spending quality time with each other. This means that your children see you daily visiting with each other. They may be in the same room, but they are not part of the conversation. They may not enter into the conversation or interrupt. It's your spouse. Is your spouse the most important person in your life? And do your actions reflect that? Do your children know that? Phil tells a story that I'm going to share today, but he talks about a time when his mom and dad were married, are still married. Well, his mom died, but anyway, they were married his whole life, and had a really good marriage and loved each other. And he talks about a time that he remembers. He was in the 4th grade, and he heard his mom and dad before school arguing, like loud, yelling at each other. And he said every day, the same routine. He would watch his dad and mom. His mom would get up, fix them all breakfast. His dad would kiss her goodbye at the exact same time every day. He would leave in his truck. He would go to his job. He would come home at exactly 5 o'clock every night and kiss his mom when he came in the door, and then they'd go on with her. He said like they were standing in the same spot. It always happened this way. Well, this particular day, they had a fight. He had never heard his parents yelling at each other. Heard him yelling. He heard his dad walk out the door, watched him not kiss his mom, slam the door, and go off to work. And he said, I just had this sick feeling that my dad's never coming back again because the routine was messed up. So he went to school, and he just couldn't. He was just sick all day long. He was just so afraid that his dad wasn't going to come home. And so he goes home, and he said, I remember sitting on the porch right after school, just waiting, praying that God would bring my dad home because he just thought, this is it. He's not coming back. And so just sick, and he just couldn't function. And he said, sure enough, 5 o'clock, my dad rolls in, comes in the back door, kisses my mom, and they just went on. And he said that shows how true this is. It just wrecked his world, that one little thing, thinking his mom and dad weren't okay. He wasn't okay if they weren't okay. And I thought that is such a key story. Our children need to see we're okay. They're okay if we're okay. Or see us come through that conflict. One of the ways that you can do this is to have quality time together. We called it relationship time, and we took a class that they talked about this, and we decided we were going to do this. So every single day after we learned, I mean, there were probably days, some 1 or 2 days during the week, but every day, the concept is this. When you come together in the evening, after you get off work, the first thing you do before you do anything else is have 5 to 10 minutes where you are just, we called it couch time. We would sit down on the couch and we would have conversation. Not a long time, but it was first. And he was glad to see the kids, but our relationship was number one. And you sit down, you have quality time with each other in front of the children. A lot of times people wait till their kids go to bed and then we can finally be together. Your kids never see you being together. So this was 5 to 10, 15 minutes, sit down on the couch, talk to each other, check in, have conversation. The kids are not part of it. They can be in the room, but I remember him saying clearly, this is mommy and daddy's time. Give us 5 minutes. And we would have that time. We still do that today. Like our kids aren't home, and we're busy. But if we don't meet up, he will call me between 4:30 and 6:30 and say, how was your day? Check in, meet up. And that was huge. I watch my married kids do the same thing. Like, that's just what they think that you do. And we live, in this culture today, we live such busy lives. We are running, and we love our kids, and we're doing things for our kids all the time. But do they ever see you two just having time together? You're role modeling in front of them. Don't wait till they go to bed. They need to see that you're okay together, and how very, very important that is. And then the third one is single parents need a relationship with a godly mentor. I really want to encourage you, if you're doing this parenting thing alone, choose somebody in your life that you can count on, that you can trust, that you can talk to, that your kids know. Women, I would find another woman. Men, find a man that you can have a godly mentor with. I've had several in my life where I've been the mentor for the mom. There was one girl in particular that she was raising 2 girls on her own, and she was really trying to do it. The dad was not in the picture at all, but it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I just invited her. She invited me into her life. I invited her into my life. And I was there. And there were times when she would call me from her apartment. She's like, I need you to come over because I don't know what to do. And so we would talk about it. We'd talk about it in front of the girls. I'd give her tips. The girls knew that I knew what was going on in their lives, and that it was godly advice, and we talked about things, and we tried things, and it was a great relationship. But find somebody like that, somebody that that your kids know that you're talking to them, that it's a stable relationship, and that you're having, that you're getting godly advice from that person. So those are really important as well. All right, so tell me this. What do you think is the most difficult thing about finding daily time to spend with God, with a spouse, or a mentor? Do you struggle with that, and what would be difficult about that in your life, doing that?
I think as parents, you always have the parent hat on, you know, and you sometimes forget that you're also wearing the wife hat or the husband hat, you know, because your kids are, especially like for us, our kids are so little.
Yeah.
So it's a constant, I need this, I need that, I need this, listen to me, talk, you know, they're still very much, they want all of your attention.
And your spouse gets it. Like, you can push them aside. They're an adult. They'll figure it out, you know? But is that really fair? And I think you're right. They're so demanding that it's easy just to give them all of your attention. It's really good. Anybody else? Why do we not do it very well? Go ahead, were you gonna say something?
Because you're the one, you're supposed to be the one with all the answers.
Okay. That's good. That's good. One of the things that we have to really be careful with in the culture today is being child-centered. It's almost like we wear it like a badge, like we do all this for our children, and but I think in that the marriage gets lost. We're doing a Bible study at our church for the women, and they can choose, like, it's called the Power of, you may have read it, it's really good. Power of a Praying, there's a Power of a Praying Wife, a Power of a Praying Parent, a Power of a Praying Woman. Okay, so we're offering all of them at the same time. And so I've had probably 10 women call me and say, what should I take? I really need parenting, but I really need marriage. And I always say, if you think you need both, do the marriage one. Because if that is the foundation, you can be the best parent in the world, but if your marriage falls apart, all of a sudden it does affect your parent. It affects your marriage. It affects your parenting. Sorry. That marriage is the stable one. Even if you're parenting wrong, if you're on the same page, it's going to be better than 2 of you parenting separately. What happens when you come together with a mentor or you come together with your spouse, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, you have a moment to talk about parenting. Even if it's just for a minute, you can get on the same page. Even if you start this week, that's going to be one of your assignments, you're talking about whatever we're talking about now, this week. Talk about those things. Get on the same page. I know our kids used to laugh. They're like, I know, you're a team, we're a team. Like, we had a boy and a girl, and I'm like, absolutely, we're on the same team, and we're gonna win. But we are on the same team. And there would be times when we give each other a look like, I don't think you're doing this right, but I'm gonna go along with you. You know, we never in person did you say, stop being so hard on them. That was just a rule we decided. If you didn't think the person was parenting right, I mean, if it was like really blatantly wrong, you just say, meet me in the kitchen. But sometimes it was just, you had to let that person go ahead, or let your spouse go ahead, and then later talk about it. But one of the worst things you can do is correct your spouse in front of your children. I had a friend their child would continually tattle on the dad to the mom, all the time. You know what daddy did? It was like, oh, no, they're on a team, you're on a team. This is bad. Somebody's gonna lose in this situation, you know, so that your kids need to know that you're stable and that you're the same. Will they try to pit each other against each other? Maybe. But you've got to be together on this, and you've got to really be careful that they do not think that they are the center of the universe and what they say is right. Okay, so I want to show an example of this. Okay, what's your little girl's name?
Emily.
Emily, will you come here? I need your help. Okay. I'm gonna use your whole family actually, so stand up here, okay? All right, you'll have to tell me your first name again.
Christina.
Christina or Christy?
Christina.
Christina and Jim. Okay, all right. You aren't around yet, so you go stand over there, okay? You haven't been born, okay? All right, so Christina and Jim, okay, they get married, okay? So I want you to hold hands here, both hands. Okay, there you go, face each other. Okay, you got married, you love each other still. How long have you been married?
11 years.
It's a stinking long time, but you still love each other, right? At least tonight, you need to say yes. All right, so they get married, all right? And they have a stable relationship, they love each other, and they decide that they're gonna have a child, okay? So tell me your name again. Emily, okay, Emily, you're a little baby, but you're all grown up, okay. So they have Emily, okay, so Emily, I want you to get in the middle here, okay? All right, they love Emily, and they are so glad that she is part of this family, all right? But they still love each other, so they're good. Well, Emily gets bigger and grows up, okay, so you're probably gonna have to let go at least one hand, all right? So you'd be right in the middle. It's getting really crowded, so you guys let go of the hands, take one step back. All right, so they were married and that was all great till Emily comes along, and now all of a sudden, Emily, she takes a lot of time, she takes a lot of finances. You know, how many of your marriage changed after you had a baby? Like, we used to call it the before baby, after baby marriage. I mean, it was like grand before, right? Okay, so we love Emily, but she takes a lot of time, and she's growing up, and she's got a lot of activities. Do you have any other children? Okay, well, let's pretend you do. All right, all right. So they have another child, and they add this child in here. Okay, now they've got 2 children. Anybody have 3 children?
I have 5.
Okay, so seriously, we've got 5. So what happens? You just keep stepping back. We keep adding children to this, all right? Now, Emily, you're going to grow up. How old are you? Okay, well, Emily, someday you're going to be 18. And you're going to be like, I'm going to go off to college, and I'm going to do my own thing. See ya. Tell your parents goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, so you leave.
Bye.
Their next child leaves, their next child leaves. Okay, what happens to this couple?
They go back together.
No, they don't.
They stay
Because
where they are.
they don't even know each other anymore. I mean, they have spent 18, and if they had more children, maybe 25 years totally focusing on the children. Everything was about the children. Even when they were by themselves, they were talking about their children. Their finances went to the children, time went to the children, and they're looking at each other now like, who are you? And what do we talk about? I created my own life, all right? That child-centered parenting, and that's how we do it a lot. All of a sudden, it's about these children, it's about these children, it's about these children. And Emily thinks she can't really understand why the whole world isn't revolving around her in school or when she leaves, because that's how our parents were. And her mom would totally take her side, even when her dad tried to discipline her. I mean, she was the center. This was a child-centered family, okay? You can see, if it hasn't happened in your home, it's happened in homes you've watched. The poor child, they don't know why the teacher isn't revolve around them. Why don't other people revolve around them? Their parents. You were the center of the universe. Doesn't everybody know that, right? And you guys grew apart because you made her the center. All right, so let's do it different, all right? So you 2 get married, all right? And you decide to have little Emily. No, just kidding. Because we're going to add Emily. That might have been before Emily, but now we're going to add Emily. Okay. So Emily comes in, and instead of putting her in the center, they're going to keep holding this hand. They're going to add Emily, let go of your hands. Okay, you're not the center of the universe. We love you, though, okay? She is a nice addition to this family. But this hand will always still be held. Now, they could have 10 kids and nicely add them to this circle. They're a part of this family. They love these children. but they are not the center. They're a welcome part. Okay, so Emily leaves, what happens to the couple? They still have it. Every child that leaves, they're still good. They can live the rest of their lives, because honestly, your children, you think about it, if you live to be 70, 80 years old, those raising children in your home was a small part of that time. So, okay, thank you. You guys can sit down. And that having relationship time and spending time together when they're home, that is one way you hold hands with that person. Having a date night, developing that relationship is really, really important. Your kids need to see that that's important. We live in a child-centered society. We really, really do. It revolves around the child. If you're a single parent, it's even harder to not do that. If it's just you and the child, what happens? Your whole world is them. You've got to find a stable relationship outside being the parent. Now, you can be extreme that way as well and abandon the child, not take good care of them, but they need to see that you have stable relationships outside of just them. And again, I feel very blessed that someone taught us this concept when our children were young. That 10 minutes every day, I believe, was a life changer for us. We still like each other. I really do. I really enjoy his company. We have a good time together, but we always kept that hand and developed that relationship, and that is really key. If you get nothing else out of this parenting class, grab a hold of that piece. It's really big. Find that stable relationship, even if it's not a marriage piece. Find a stable relationship in your life where your kids know you're okay because you have a stable relationship. All right, let's look at page 15 and just visit a little bit about some of these questions on here. We talked about finding the most difficult thing. Again, we have to decide what our priorities are. We make time for what we think is most important, and you have to decide it and make time for it and be self-disciplined in it. Number 2, it says, list some ways spending a small amount of time every day visiting with your spouse or mentor will benefit your family. So I want you just to think about that for a minute. Maybe that's not something you're doing right now, but how would your family benefit if you decided that every day you were just going to spend a little bit of time with your spouse or with a mentor? Maybe write an answer down, or at least think about it, and then we'll talk about that. Let's start with the spouse one. Those of you who have spouses, if you haven't been doing this every day, what is something that would benefit your family if you, let's say you started tomorrow and you were going to every day spend the first 10 minutes when your whole family came together, time together, how do you think that would benefit your family?
So structured.
What?
So structured.
Okay, why? Tell me, expound on that. What do you mean?
So basically, like, your communication shows that you guys are working together.
Okay, okay.
Shows that you're not, it keeps you from fighting and arguing.
Okay.
Just shows that, if it's right opinion against each other, you're still gonna communicate
Right,
about it.
right. And I think communication is a key. If you spend 10 minutes communicating with someone, that can put out a lot of fires early. We know we're busy. We come in, you have stresses from work, things are kind of crazy, you're trying to get supper together, you're going to practice, whatever you're doing, get kids' homework done, everybody's tired. It's almost like a 10-minute timeout. We're gonna have this 10 minutes, we're gonna figure this out. 10 minutes isn't very long in your day. And we would let our children watch. It didn't take very long for them to figure out that they were not a part of this conversation. We loved them and they were there, and in a minute we were gonna meet their needs. But at first, if you're very child-centered and you have little kids, it's gonna take a few days to go, this really isn't about you right now. I know we've made you think the world revolves around you, but it doesn't for 10 minutes now. And then it was almost like they wanted that, they expected that, they needed to see their parents together every day. Kind of like Phil saying, knowing his parents came home every day, that's what happened. And so it builds stability in them, that's good. Anybody else, those of you who are married, how would it change you? How would it change the dynamic of your home if you did that?
Less stress and more relaxation and more love between family and
Okay.
child.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Will you try it? If you're married, will you try it? Of course you will, because you always do your homework. You signed in blood that you would do your homework. Do that this week. They'll make an effort to do that this week in the stable relationship. What about finding a mentor? Those of you who are single parents, can you see where finding someone, and it may be a parent. Anybody live close to their parent? I know for some, maybe, I don't know if that would be for you, but some of you living close to your parents, that could be a stable person. But can you see where having a mentor, or does anybody have a mentor in their life that's made a difference for them?
My mom.
Okay. Tell me about that. How is that helpful?
I talk to her about everything.
Okay.
And no matter what it is, I feel comfortable around her, and she gives me advice.
Okay.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but
Does her relationship with you bring stability into your life?
in a way, yes.
You know you have somebody to go to.
Yes.
You can trust her opinion.
Right.
Okay, your kids know that too. There's some stability brought into that relationship by that person. And I think that that's really good. Now, is everything always perfect between you? No, but it isn't with your spouse either, right?
Yeah.
And there are times when it's hard, but ultimately, it's a stable relationship that they can count on,
Right.
and it will make a difference. Try it. We have had people that kids quit wetting their bed when their parents they watched their parents spend that 15 minutes together every day. The kids didn't fight as much amongst each other. Those parents being on the same team was very, very helpful. All right. Number 3, and we've really talked about this, but I'll give you a chance if you have something to add. To explain how stable relationships would help your children feel more secure. We have an answer for that one?
How you feel an act affects them or people around you, and so if you're, stable and have what you need to be comfortable or whatever, they're gonna be comfortable too.
Yeah. Have you ever had your child look at you, and whether they said it or not, like, are we okay? Is everything okay? And they're looking to you to find out if everything's okay. And there is a sense of, if you're stable and secure and things are okay, they're gonna be okay. We can get through this. It's like my daughter slamming her hand down and saying, please be okay. You said we could trust God, and I need you to trust God, and that sense of feeling, are we okay? And that's why, and many of you, I've heard some of you say this, even the sense of your own parents divorcing. You remember your parents divorcing, or maybe you have been you've divorced your spouse, and it does affect your kids. It's hard. That even if it wasn't perfect, there's a sense of stability that's broken there, and you got to do something to bring a stability back into your home. So it's hard. Anybody else want to comment on that stable relationship, helping children feel more secure?
I have a prime example.
Okay.
I have a little girl whose parents got divorced, and she was a happy child, and then ever since that divorce, she's cried every time she comes into school. It's just devastated her.
Yeah.
And, it's like, oh man, I wish I could help her.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I just think that is,
just
that
breaks your heart.
it is, it's a key relationship. It is a key relationship. And I think that, many of you have been through divorces and you've done this. But I love reset buttons. It doesn't mean you took a parenting class, reset, what can you do to bring stability into your life now? Some of you are struggling and that's why you're kind of in turmoil with, maybe going through classes or trying to figure out or getting your kids back. Right now, it feels very unstable and it feels like a lot of crisis. We have the opportunity to bring it back, like to recenter our lives. It's never too late to push a reset button and make this work. Is it hard? Yeah. But you don't have to keep spiraling down. It can be a sense of, okay, we can recenter. We're gonna have to work hard, but we can recenter and we can make this happen. I think sometimes there's a sense of hopelessness. I've done it wrong for so long. What's the difference anyway? Might as well just keep going. I just want to shake people. No. It's never too late to, and I believe firmly in the concept, you reap what you sow, right? Okay? Some of you have sowed bad seed. We've all sowed bad seed, but some of you have sown a lot of bad seed, and there's bad fruit coming off the tree, right? Okay, but if that's true, you sow bad seed, you're reaping bad fruit, is it also not true when you start sowing good seed, you're gonna reap good fruit, right? But you gotta keep doing it. Once you plant that apple seed, you don't have apples the next day. Just like when you planted the bad seed, you thought everything was fine. 10 years later, like, oh my goodness, that bad seed produced bad fruit. Same way, when you start planting good seed, give it some time, don't give up on that. And so you can always push that reset button. After us talking about being a child-centered family, and you don't have to say this out loud, or don't say this out loud, but can you see that, evaluate your own family. Are you a child-centered family, or do you lean towards that? And if so, what can you do different? How can you instead decide you're going to make your child a welcome addition to the family instead of the center of the family? And I think sometimes you go in seasons. Have you ever thought to yourself, these children think the world revolves around them? I used to say to my kids, you have an open hand all the time. You take, but you never give. There's something wrong here. You think this whole thing's about you, and it's not. And so I think there's seasons of that, but we can go back and go, okay, how are we gonna make it so they're not an addition and not the center? And then number 6 says, what are steps that you can take to improve in this area? Nobody's perfect. So what are some things that you can do in your home to put it back where your child is not the center of the universe? Some of you wise veteran parents, you have any ideas for us?
Do what you said. Spend 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, there you go. That's an easy answer, isn't it? All right.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, that's good. And the other thing is, remember, everything you learn in here, if your children are 7 or older, you can go back home and go, okay, we made a mistake. We learned tonight, we made you the center of the world, and we're so sorry. We're not going to do that anymore. Our relationship, do you understand? Mommy and Daddy's relationship is number 1, and we're going to do that, right? Or I made you think that everything is about you, and I'm sorry. It's not. It's just, I love you, but the whole world isn't about you. And if I make you think that, you're going to think everybody thinks that about you, whatever. So making time to do that. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns before we move into personal reflection and homework? What nugget do you take home today? What's one thing you're going to take home today and go, oh, I'm taking that one. That was a good piece of information. Surely there's one. Yes, ma'am. Yes, and you are not the center of the universe. Did you learn that today? Perfect. Everybody should have brought their kids today. You're right. You tell your parents, have you spent your 10 minutes together? Have you spent your 10 minutes together today? You can ask them. That's good.
Get on to it.
All right. How many of you, do any of you that are single, doing this single, do you have a mentor in your life? Monica, you mentioned your mom.
Yeah.
Okay. I would encourage you girls, find somebody that you can be a mentor. Yeah, you, Catherine. You're doing it on your own. And even at this point, if you don't have your kids with you right now, ask somebody. This is a good point to, if you know somebody who is a parent, you can start going over the parenting things with them. What do you think about this, or how did you handle this, or what did you do? Those are good things to do as well. So personal reflection questions, and these are for you to look over and think about on your own. What are some steps that you can take to create a relationship time in your family? Okay, if you are here with your spouse, talk about it. Are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? Let's make this happen, all right? You may have to explain to your kids, we're gonna try something new. It's called relationship time, or it's called couch time. So every night when mom and dad come home from work, we're gonna sit down on the couch for 10 minutes. You can set a timer if they're little. Now, we don't want you to bother us for 10 minutes. You can play in front of us or whatever, but we're gonna spend 10 minutes together every single night. How old are your kids?
5 and 6.
Perfect, perfect. And just, this is what we're going to do, all right? Or if you're a single parent and you have a mentor in your life, explain to your child, you know, I'm raising you all by myself, as you know, and I need somebody to reflect off of them. So I'm gonna ask them to be my mentor, and I'm gonna be talking to them, and they're gonna be helping me along and praying with me, and how important that is. And then number 2, what are some thoughts and attitudes you will have to change to prevent being a child-centered family? What are some attitudes or thoughts that you might have to change?
Quit saying yes.
Okay? Okay, and when you're spending that couch time, should we be saying yes to this? Should we be doing this now? It's a great time to talk about that. That's good. He said, quit saying yes. Okay, anything else that you can do in your attitudes? Anybody worried their kids are gonna be mad at them?
We don't care in our house.
I didn't like that. I did not want my children to be mad at me. I mean, I'll just be honest, that was really hard for me. I don't like conflict. I was a middle child, I'm a peacemaker. I just as soon everybody be happy than have conflict. And I really had to go, but that will create a child-centered parenting, because you're just trying to keep everybody happy. You'll just do whatever makes everybody happy. That's not a healthy way to live either. So you have the better attitude in that. So I had to think through what's really best for this child, not how do I prevent conflict. Because there's gonna be times when your kids aren't happy with you. Bummer, but true. They don't know. They know what they want when they want, just like we do. We have to bring it back and go, this isn't the best for you.
That's how she gets me.
I think explaining why to your kids.
Okay,
You
it's
know,
good.
even a no or whatever. You can't do this because
Right.
this.
It's good, and that's the next
Because
chapter.
that, I think that helps with a lot of the frustration they feel when you tell them no.
Absolutely.
If you can explain to it, it's for your benefit,
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah. And we're gonna talk about training the heart of your child, not just getting them to obey. And so that's exactly right. And again, it takes time to parent that way, right? I mean, it's just it's harder than just no, yes, this is because. Yeah. Good. All right.
One thing that I see in my school, I'm at a middle school, and I see some parents, and I just cringe because they say, you know, we used to be such good friends, and we're not friends anymore. And I tell the parents, they don't need a friend. They've
Right.
got plenty of friends.
Right.
They need a parent,
Right.
and they want a parent. They do
Right,
want a
yeah.
parent. But I think a lot of times parents want to be their friend, and
Yeah.
that's not what kids
Yeah,
need.
yeah, that's right. It's good. And that if you're trying really hard to be somebody's friend, you're always doing what pleases them and not, yeah, kids, and we're gonna talk about structure. Kids want a clear line. This is right, this is wrong. They don't always wanna do that, but they need to know where the line is at all times. It's really good. Great example. All right, homework this week on page 16. This week you will be practicing your relationship time. Please practice a minimum of 4 days this week. Remember to practice relationship time with both God and your spouse or mentor. Number 1, explain what your relationship time currently looks like with God and with your spouse or mentor. So where are you now so that you can move towards improvement in this area? You may not have any time. You may not have any time with God. You may not have a relationship with God at all. Try it this week. Change your life. And you may or may not have a relationship time with your spouse at all. I mean, I know there are many people out there that are just functioning or just getting by. That may be where you're at. How can you change that? If you're single, you're doing this on your own and you're trying, but it's tough to do it on your own. How can you bring somebody in to help you? So where are you at now is the first question. And the second one is, what can you do this week to make it improve? So there's a chart on page 17. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a relationship time for 4 days out of the 7. Some of you will be overachievers and you'll do 7 times. So do that, that'll be great. And then you're going to each one of those days, when and where, you know, and I would even, you know, if the relationship time thing is new for you, there's a lot of apps on your phone that you can put on as far as devotionals, or there's a really good one called YouVersion, and they have specific ones, devotions for single dads, devotions for, they have hundreds on there that you can just take time every day just to take a breath and go, okay, what instructions, and communicating with God during that time. When and where did you have your relationship time with your spouse or mentor today? And then you're gonna make a comment about each one of them. Was it easy or difficult to have this time, and why or why not? So see where you are, make an effort this week to have that time, and then evaluate it. How did it go? And I really think that if you aren't doing it, and you will do it 4 days, by day 4, you're gonna start seeing a difference. Now, you're not gonna do 4 days and quit. You're starting a habit in your life to do that. And sometimes it's just a sense of, we're so busy and we're so chaotic, you're just gonna take a deep breath for a few minutes during the day and recenter and get this figured out. All right? Comments or questions about what you're gonna do this week? Okay.
This is not an area where we struggle.
Okay.
And so is there something else that we could possibly work on? Because honestly, every night we have a little bit of family time.
Okay.
And then once he goes to bed, then, we'll play video games and watch a movie. So
Right.
every night we
Right.
hang out.
Okay.
So is there a different area where we
Okay.
can?
And remember, and this is a great question, because this is what, next week some of you will come back with that question, but remember, this isn't necessarily the quality time with your child. This is quality time with someone else that they're seeing. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, so.
Besides my husband?
Oh, your husband, okay, I thought you were talking about your son. Okay, yes, no, that's perfect, that's good.
No, like sometimes we play a game together or watch a TV show or
Right,
whatever.
and
but
they
then-
see, the kids see you spending time together.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
what we have done is we've created a space in the basement, so that's just our space, and they have to ask permission to come down there
Okay.
when we're down there together,
Okay.
because we, and we've explained to them, you don't know what we're talking about, and there are just certain subjects that you don't need to be a part of.
Okay,
But we always make sure that we have our adult time together,
Yeah.
but we still
That's
include
really
them
good.
every evening.
yeah, that's really, keep doing it, that can be your practice. And maybe even while you're doing that, talking about specific things, since he's not here, some of the specific things in parenting. It's good, no, that's good that you're doing that, it's excellent, excellent. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, how many of you can do something different this week than what you're doing right now in this area? Okay, good, half the class, what about the rest of you? Okay, raise your hand.
Oh, he's on.
Yeah, Corbin, raise your hand.
Oh.
That's all I want, perfect. Okay, you got it.
I was like, you talking to me? I was like, you talking to me or?
I was. I
Okay.
was. All right. Okay, well, we're gonna, remember, building process. What was the first thing that we learned this year? Gonna still work on this week? Okay, so what are you gonna work on this week? Keep doing this week. Keep being a good example. Keep finding things in your life that you want to improve so that you become a better example, right? Keep evaluating yourself about how are you doing in these areas. Keep practicing the good manners at home. Watch how you're treating others while your children are around you. And does anybody have little bitty kids? Yes, you have a little one, right? One of the things, I love having parents that have kids who are too little to actually do the stuff that you're talking about, because it's almost like you're training yourself before. We had a couple here, I think 2 sessions ago, and their kids were little, like they're still, I think they were like 6 months and not quite 2, they were little, and they talked about how they just started practicing these things. They were doing them before they had to do them, and so it became habit in their lives. So I want to encourage you to do that. And then for some of you who have older children, you're going to really have to backtrack and talk to them about what you're doing and how you're doing it as well. So be sure that you do that as well, all right? And then next week we'll talk about a lot what you were saying, Sandy, it was great, is that that we're shaping kids' hearts. We aren't trying to get them to do something, we want them to be kids that when they're adults or when we're not around, they are doing the right thing because we've shaped their heart. You know, it's not like, well, they were really good until they turned teenagers and they could get away from us, and then they turned into hellions. You know, that's not the goal. The goal is to train them so that when they're old enough, they can make good decisions for themselves as well. We'll talk about that next week. All right? Okay, I'm gonna pray so you guys can go. Don't get very much snow out there. God, I just ask for wisdom. God, I thank you that you're a God that wants to have a relationship with us. So God, I just ask that you would just tug on our hearts to really want to spend time with you, want to know your plan, God, because we know that it's the perfect one, and that you are a God that does want to have a relationship with us, and you do want to speak to us. So God, I just ask that you would help in that area. I pray over each marriage that's represented here in this room, God, that you would bless them, God, for choosing to take a parenting class and just really having the desire to make their marriage a solid foundation for their family. So bless them in that. God, I pray for the single parents here today, God, that they would find stability in relationships with not only with you, but with other people. God, send people into their lives that will help them along and just be a partner with them. It's difficult to raise children on your own, and just send good support people into their lives. God, I just ask that you take everybody home safely, and that you would just bless every home represented here. I just ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.